3 tips to create a lot of rhythm in your tracks. And no, we're not going to be using hi-hats actually as one of these ways to create rhythm. Welcome back to another video, guys. If you're new here and you're an indie musician creating music and you're trying to get streams on that music and trying to get followers, feel free to subscribe to the channel because that's what this channel is all about. I'm an indie musician too, doing that as well. So feel free to subscribe and we can go along that journey together. The first way I like to create rhythm in tracks sometimes is using an arpeggiator. If you're not familiar with an arpeggiator, this is what an arpeggiator does to a sound. So we have a bass sound here. And this would be familiar to something you've built before, right? There's long MIDI notes, and we're gonna put an arpeggiator on this. And so what an arpeggiator does, I actually have the arpeggiator in the plugin. So now with the arpeggiator on, it sounds like this. So already a ton more rhythm, right? Instead of having long bass notes, we have rhythmic bass notes. I'm using the Trillion bass plugin here. It's a great bass plugin. If you don't have Trillion, that's okay. Let's recreate it right now using Alchemy and a simple sine wave bass synth. So let's go track, new software instrument, and go to Alchemy. So here's a deep bass, and this is what I want to use. So we load up the deep bass, and we're just going to put, we're going to unsolo that original bass, and we're just going to put actually let's just copy the MIDI over. Option hold plus click to make a copy of the region. So now we have this deep Alchemy bass. So how we're going to add the arpeggiator is go over to MIDI effects and click arpeggiator. And then this is what the arpeggiator looks like. So the arpeggiator, the most important thing you need to know about the arpeggiator is the rate at what the arpeggiator goes. So you have multiple different rates. For example, the 1/16th rate will be really fast. Can be cool if you're going for that vibe. So let's drop it down to 1/8. Okay, now let's say we don't want it so mechanical and machine-like, and we want a bit of rhythm within the arpeggiator. We're going to create our own pattern now in this area. And how we do that, we're gonna press grid, and then I'm going to click some notes here. Let's go all the way up to 8. And we're going to do an 8-bar pattern here. So this is just going to sound the same. You can see it going through the pattern. So now in this grid, we can control the velocity of the notes, like high being harder, low being softer. So we can control that, but also we can skip some notes. Like if we click off number 5, then it's going to go through the arpeggiator, but not play this note. So that already creates more rhythm, right? Another thing you can change in the arpeggiator is actually the note order. It has to more do when you're actually dealing with chords. Since we're just dealing with mono notes here, the note order isn't really going to affect things. If you don't want to draw your own pattern in, you don't have to do that. You can go down to these arrows here and just click left, right, and they're going to give you some preset patterns that might sound cool. So let's go to this one and see what this sounds like. Sometimes you can get an idea, and then if you like one, maybe you can edit a bit. Okay, let's do the same thing, but let's use chords now. So let's go to a track and just get a type of brass synth. So new software instrument. Let's go to the retro synth and do like a warm brass synth. Synth brass, yeah, mellow brass. And we're gonna just copy this MIDI data from the keys. I'm going to take out these bass notes and only have the triads. So I'm just going to get rid of these notes here. Cool. So let's add the arpeggiator and hear what that sounds like. So MIDI effects, arpeggiator. Then we'll go to 1/8 again. Probably did a bit too much sustain, so I'm just going to lower that now. Let's hear what this sounds like. Let's add a bit of reverb. Medium hall, I think. So already a really cool vibe, right? Like if we take the arpeggiator off, I mean, this is cool too, but it's just very basic. And sometimes the song needs that, but sometimes the song needs more rhythm. So put an arpeggiator on. Now we get... Let's get on to the next thing, which is thinking like about hi-hats and what the hi-hat rhythm is, but just applying it to another instrument. And one instrument I like to do that to a lot of times is the guitars. And having guitars kind of be like hi-hats. This is eighth notes. But then you can have little cool things happening like between bar 18 and 19 here. Hi-hats is kind of like even a hi-hat fill in a way. Then you can play with the panning. This one's going off to the left, this one's going off to the right, and now we get this really cool effect, which is very rhythmic. That's the thing though. I wouldn't have all these rhythmic things maybe together all the time, like an arpeggiated bass, an arpeggiated synth, and these hi-hat guitars. Maybe you can. It doesn't really sound like these are working well together, this arpeggiated synth. It sounds like they're fighting a bit, so if I took the arpeggiator off, that might even just be better. Can just have them in really tucked back, maybe even pan them harder, so they're really not noticeable in a way, but they're still providing a lot of rhythm. Again, acting a lot like hi-hats would. Okay, let's get on to the next way to create rhythm in your tracks, is to use a tremulator. This is a plugin that's available, I believe, on Logic. I'm actually not 100% sure. I use a paid plugin. There's got to be a way to tremulate something. Step FX might be it. Yeah, I think Step FX would do it. So I'm working with this guitar pad here, and without any tremulator or Step FX, it just sounds like this. With a tremulator, here's what we get. And a tremulator is basically just going to chop your signal in a way and move it like pulsating effect. And you can tell, just like an arpeggiator, you can tell the tremulator the rhythm. So I'm also going at 1/8 rhythm. If you want that to be faster, we can do 1/16. You can go slower to 1/4. And then you can choose also how intense that pulsating effect is. If you don't want it to be so intense, you can pull that back as well on the depth of the tremulator. So at min, you won't be able to hear anything. And as we bring this up, so you can add tremulators on pads, on sweeps, on white noise, on anything, again, just like the arpeggiator. It's sometimes good to just throw these different plugins on instruments just to see what it gives you to spark fresh ideas. If you don't have this plugin, this is the Tremulator Sound Toys plugin. You can use the Step FX plugin, which we just found, and just throwing it on there without anything, without pressing anything, it sounds kind of similar. The pattern is much faster, so we can probably find some type of rhythmic pattern here. Rate. Here we go. Rate. So I'll bring that down to 1/8. And it's also doing some like filter automation too on that. So which is even cool in a way, more cool than what I had on the tremulator. it's doing this filter automation here, and it looks like you can kind of draw the pattern in here, just like the Arpeggiator. It's very, very similar. So those are 3 kind of fresh, unique ways to create rhythm in your tracks. I use it in a lot of the tracks I'm doing. And if you're making music, then please feel free to subscribe, like I was saying in the beginning, because that's what this channel is all about. So I hope to see you in the next video.